and welcome to This Week in Combat Sports, where we'll be taking a look ahead at this weekend's big fights, as well as taking a closer look at some of the bigger news of the day. I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Rick Rockwell. Rick, there are a ton of events going on this weekend. That might even be an understatement. UFC is in South Florida Saturday night. Bellator 220, a stacked card in California. Plus, there's a bunch of boxing. Probably a tough question to ask, but which event are you most pumped for this weekend?
That is a tough question to ask. Three boxing events with world title fights in the main events itself and more title fights on the undercards. UFC has actually a good card, but it's a fight night. It's not a big pay-per-view, so I'm not as excited for that. I'm going with Bellator. Here's why. This is one of the best cards they've had in a while. It's going to be a good main event, although I believe McDonald will win handedly. The co-main event is a women's world title fight. Benson Henderson is fighting on the card. Phil Davis is in a rematch with McGarry. It's just going to be a stacked main card. And I'm not even talking about the prelim fights. The main card itself has 5 good fights, 5 solid matchups. I'm excited for it. I'm excited when Bellator can put something good together because they do have some solid fighters in there. So for me, out of all 5 of these big events that I've been talking about and I've written about on our website, Bellator 220, that's what I'm most pumped for.
Lots of big-time bouts means lots of chances for a big-time upset. Which bout or bouts do you think offer the best upset potential this weekend?
Now, that is the toughest question of them all.
Got to keep you honest.
Like, you just made it. You just went 10 times harder than the first question. Wow. Okay, so first of all, if you can see, I'm wearing me a Joker shirt right here, okay? In the UFC main event, you got Jacare taking on the Joker, Jack Hermanson. I picked the Joker to win in an upset. He's about a plus 170, plus 180 underdog. I think he has the skills to win, but he's not even the biggest underdog that I went with this weekend. In boxing, Nonito Donaire is returning to action in the World Boxing Super Series, and he's in the semifinals. And he's a plus 500 underdog. I picked him to win. I think Donaire has the experience. He looked better in the first round than his opponent did. And then you go over to, and I mentioned this in our odds on Favorites podcast, Robert Easter taking on Rance Bartholomew. Easter's a huge betting favorite, minus 700 last I saw the odds. His opponent, anywhere up to plus 600. I think his opponent's going to win. Bottom line, what I'm trying to say is this is an exciting weekend. Even in the big title fights for boxing, you have potential upsets. In the main events, you have potential upsets. The main event for UFC, you have potential upset. The only thing you don't have a potential upset for in the main event is Bellator, because the Red King's going to win it.
Last one for you. Of the 5 events this weekend that you've been talking about, which do you think offers the best betting odds on an overall basis? Not just the main event, but just looking at the card as a whole.
Wow. These questions do not get any easier. We're in the 3rd and final round now. If this was a championship fight, we'd have to go 5 questions for 5 rounds. Okay. You know what? These boxing events, if you include the preliminary card, well, here's the problem. Let me just put this out there for these sports betting sites, okay? And even some of the sports books. They don't all list Bellator odds. So we don't have a lot of betting odds for the undercard. And there's some great fights that I just mentioned. So we can't even include that in this conversation. Then you get to some of the boxing events and the fights that they actually have odds listed for. Outside of maybe a few of the main card fights, all of them have huge betting odds. Drastic difference between the betting favorite and the underdog. So for most of the boxing cards, I throw that out too. So that takes me back to the UFC. Over the last couple of weeks, some of the UFC events had pretty large disparities in the favorites versus the underdogs. This one, they had a lot closer odds for these fights. There's 13 scheduled. The main event, even though Jacare Souza is, he was like a minus 190 favorite, other than maybe 2 other fights, that's the biggest odds in disparity. So I think from top to bottom, and you got a lot of good fights from the prelims all the way to the main card, some close contests on paper and close contests with the sports books. So with that said, I got to go with UFC Fight Night from Florida this weekend. I think from a betting perspective, there's plenty of betting value. You can read my preview on that. I list the 5 or 6 fighters that I think offer good betting value. And from top to bottom, to answer your question, I think this event gives us the best chance of either winning on a favorite, winning more money, or have a greater return on an underdog.
Rick Rockwell, we just went 3 rounds. You made it to the judge's decision. Unfortunately, I think you lost 30-27, but I could be wrong with that. Not really sure. That's just the one judge. I haven't checked with all of them yet. It's not unanimous just yet. Thank you so much. Be sure to check out Rick's articles on boxing, MMA, and more online now at gamblingsites.org. Like we said, there are 5 events this weekend. He's got them all covered, all broken down for you. Just make sure you head over to gamblingsites.org. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds on Favorites YouTube channel. I'm Drew Goldfarb. He's Rick Rockwell. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.